Data is downloaded to a desktop computer for analysis. The instruments are protected by steel cages which are held in position by a combination of anchor and float. As well as the batteries which power it all, each cage carries a nutrient analyzer, a fluorometer to measure the pigment concentration in phytoplankton, and a transmissometer to measure the particles suspended in the water. There are also meters to record currents and measure the water temperature and salinity, as well as traps for collecting particles which are sinking towards the seabed. The site selected for the project was Loch Linnhe. It has the typical fjord features of a sea loch with several deep basins separated by shallow sills. Fresh water drains from Loch Ness and the mountains at the head of the loch, and at the other end it opens to the sea through the Firth of Lorne. The loch supports some fish farms, but they're less numerous than in other similar lochs. Another advantage offered by Loch Linnhe was that scientists from the nearby Dunstafnage Marine Laboratory were already studying the microbiology of its sediments. The instrument rigs are moored at 4 sites, one at the seaward mouth of each basin and one in the middle of the outer and inner basins. The site at Corran Narrows can be serviced by divers, but the others are in deep water and instruments have to be deployed and recovered from a ship with heavy lifting gear. Recorders at 3 locations measure the sea level along the length of the loch over each tidal cycle. There's also regular monitoring of meteorological data, nutrient concentrations, and the volume of water entering the loch from rivers and sewage treatment plants.
Running up here and running right up to that point. So.
How you doing, boys? Nice to see you again.
Every month through 1991, scientific staff from the marine laboratories in Aberdeen and Plymouth have taken their instruments to Oban to load onto the research vessel Loch Foyle. Accurate satellite navigation systems were installed at the start of the program, but all the other sampling equipment has to travel by road from Aberdeen every month. One container is fitted out as a mobile lab, which is fixed to the deck of the ship. Each survey cruise lasts 7 days, and the same scientific schedule is followed every time. The first job is to lift each mooring rig and replace its instruments with fresh units. This takes some 3 to 4 hours at each site. Once the instruments are on board, their data are downloaded to a desktop computer and plotted out. Water samples collected from a range of depths are analysed on board, while others are preserved for analysis back in Aberdeen. Instruments are lowered to record temperature, salinity, light intensity, phytoplankton concentration, zooplankton numbers, and many other features. The researchers from Plymouth collect samples of phytoplankton to measure the rate of carbon fixation and the rates at which they're taking up nitrogen from the water. Through the day, light densities vary at different depths, so to simulate those conditions, several light screens are set up on deck. The samples are incubated underneath them. In another part of the ship, more samples are analysed to measure the rate of bacterial activity. And samples of sediment taken from the seabed with a corer are studied to measure the rate at which the action of microbes is releasing inorganic nitrogen into the water.
The task of utilising the vessel can be quite daunting because of the diversity of tasks on board, machinery, and because there's such a small team on board to ensure that the right people and the right machines are available to carry out the programme, and that people, of course, manage to get rest. Means that 18-hour days are not uncommon.
Live zooplankton are also collected in a net, and specimens of the main species of the zooplankton and jellyfish populations are incubated to measure the rates at which they're excreting ammonium salts. On each cruise, towed instruments are used to sample the chemical, physical and biological properties of the water in both the loch and in the Firth of Lorne. A device known as Aries is towed along the midline of the loch and out into the Firth. Its depth is continually varied and monitored. At 1 second intervals, Its equipment measures and stores data on temperature, salinity, plankton concentrations, and other items of interest. At the same time, other systems collect plankton and sample water at 2-minute intervals. When Aries is recovered, all the stored data is downloaded for analysis while other samples are analysed and processed. The week's cruise is a very concentrated exercise in the collection and collation of data. In addition to the processes we've already seen, more samples are taken by instruments towed 3 meters deep in a frame alongside the vessel. The Loch Foyle charts a zigzag survey course over the whole of the loch and the wide area of the Firth of Lorne to collect more detailed data on the horizontal distribution of relevant items in the surface layer. This time, the instruments in the frame are connected to the onboard computers, so changes in measurements can be observed in real time. Simultaneously, water is pumped up a hose attached to the towing cable. It's fed to a nitrate analysis system in a laboratory on board the ship. While all this information is coming over the port side of the vessel, yet more is being received from a towfish carrying 2 echo sounder transducers on the starboard side. They record data on the complicated layering patterns of plankton organisms in the loch and allow the scientists to estimate the quantity of organisms for each survey. These are the organisms causing the layering patterns seen on the echo sounder. They're collected by towing a net at 10 sites on each cruise. Most of them are predators on zooplankton, and the model predicts that they can have a big impact on the recycling of nutrients. By including data on their numbers, the model can predict more accurately the effect they may have on the ecosystem. The whole project is a successful demonstration of how the scientists of the Marine Laboratory in Aberdeen have confronted a complex problem. First results indicate that the extra nutrients produced by fish farming pose little threat to the well-being of the loch. But the vast amount of information gathered has much wider-reaching implications. The Loch Linnhe dataset is building into a very valuable resource. The innovative instruments which have been developed in support of the program have more than proved their worth and paved the way for future technological improvements. The project was designed to test a computer model of a very specialized coastal ecosystem, but its principles can be applied in a wide range of coastal environments. The results of this research program will lead towards a clearer perception of the problems posed by increased nutrient levels in coastal waters. Professional projects like this are essential if we are to manage the precious offshore resources with the sensitivity they need. Whatever one's role in the scenario, fish farmer, research scientist, environmentalist, information is the first step towards understanding.